All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today at Microsoft. If you are hoping to hear about CJIS today, you're in the right place. So in today's session, we will be talking about CJIS, and the backdrop is in October 2022, the FBI released CJIS Security Policy version 5.9.1, which brings new cloud options for managing criminal justice information. Microsoft pioneered cloud for U.S. criminal justice agencies and is leading the way again with new cloud options. On today's call, you will learn about the important policy update, explore different cloud deployment options, and discover Microsoft resources to help criminal justice agencies leverage the cloud in compliance with CJIS. If you have questions throughout today's session, our team will answer them in the chat. Today's presenters, we have Rick Zach, Director of Data Governance and Compliance, U.S. State and Local Government. We have Charlie Schaeffer, Director of Public Safety and Justice Strategy, U.S. State and Local Government. And then two of our senior technical specialists, Leo Ramirez and Ashok Ghosh. Before I turn it over to Rick, I do have a question for you, Rick.
I'm ready.
Why did the police officer cross the road?
I'm gonna say I don't know.
Okay. To give the chicken a jaywalking ticket, Rick.
Thank you, Barry.
Without further ado, I am going to go off camera, and it's all you.
All right. Thank you very much, Barry. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the bad dad joke to kick us off. Hi, everybody. My name is Rick Zach. As Barry noted, I lead our work around data governance compliance in Microsoft U.S. State and Local Government. I came to this role after leading our public safety and justice strategy for many years. So I've been swimming in the waters of CJIS and the CJIS security policy for many years, and I'm excited to be part of sharing some of the insights today on changes to the policy and new options for cloud deployments that are now available. Part of what we want to do is walk you through some of the backstory on the policy and the drivers behind the change, but it's really important to start on the Microsoft side on laying out some of the background for Microsoft and its commitment to compliance all up. You can see the different compliance standards, but Microsoft really led the way for supporting compliance with the CJIS security policy starting back in 2013. We launched Office 365 Government Community Cloud, backed by CJIS management agreements with state CJIS systems agencies all across the country. And in fact, if you note the date, in 2013 is when we launched that, and the word cloud didn't actually appear in the CJIS security policy until 2014. So, our commitment to supporting your compliance goes back nearly 10 years in supporting cloud deployments around criminal justice information. You can also see how this commitment to compliance has continued over the years. So additional solutions that's with a contractual commitment to the CJIS security policy. Azure Government, you can see the Dynamics 365 US Government that we launched. And then platforms in the cloud that are built to different missions and different workloads. So you can see secret or top secret cloud. There's a Azure Government Department of Defense version. And what this reflects is that we work very closely with our customers, take their compliance very seriously, and build those capabilities into our products, both in technical controls and policy controls, and the kind of agreements that bind us contractually to supporting our customers and following through on commitments around CJIS compliance. One of the things that's important to know is we often get asked, okay, not just CJIS security policy, but all these other policies, prove it. Prove what you do. And we do this in a very transparent way. If you're not already in the Microsoft Service Trust Portal, I would say talk to your account team. They can get you access to it. You can get access to Service Trust Portal at Microsoft. If you just search Service Trust Portal, you'll get to it. And what it is a commitment from Microsoft to being transparent on how we support our customers' compliance with these critical standards. Barry, go ahead. Next slide, if you would. This is a view of just one section of the Service Trust Portal. So it's quite extensive, but I wanted to give you a look at just sort of one slice of it. And one policy that I'll pull out is FedRAMP. and which has a strong connection to NIST 853. And if you see where the CJIS security policy is coming, you can see these things connect to each other in many ways. And if you went into our Service Trust portal and said, I want to know what's available for FedRAMP, system security plans, FedRAMP audits, POAMs, right? Plans of action, milestones, penetration test results. We want our customers, criminal justice agencies, government agencies, to know in detail what we do to support their compliance, how we attest to it, and give them the opportunity to review these artifacts themselves. We know these standards are critical to delivering on agencies' mission, and part of our commitment to compliance is making sure that you know exactly how we support you in that mission. And now Charlie Schaeffer is going to join us. He's going to share some background on the CJIS security policy itself, some changes that have come and will come to the policy, and the drivers behind these changes. Charlie, over to you.
Thank you, Rick. Can we have the next slide, please? Right, so hello, everyone. My name is Charlie, and I am responsible for public safety and justice strategy for Microsoft state and local government. Prior to my role at Microsoft, I served as a division director for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, where I was the CJIS Systems Officer, Compact Officer, and in that capacity, I served as the first vice chairman of the FBI's CJIS Advisory Policy Board and a member of the Security and Access Subcommittee. So for a little perspective, let me tell you a little bit how the sausage is made. The Advisory Policy Board, or APB, is a Federal Advisory Committee Act FACA that advises the government on policies relating to criminal justice information. The APB has 35 members that are appointed by the director of the FBI based on their representation around the country and subject matter expertise. Supporting the APB are ad hoc subcommittees, one of which is the Security and Access Subcommittee, and working groups, which are comprised of all 50 states, territories, tribes, and federal agencies that have a criminal justice component. The APB is presented topics by a subcommittee chairman that are vetted through the working groups and the appropriate subcommittees. Once the APB has heard those topics and is ready to make a recommendation, that recommendation is forwarded to the FBI director for final approval. Upon that approval, it's published on the FBI's website, and I've included a link to version 5.9.1 on this slide. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Next slide, please. All of the topics presented to the APB follow a shared responsibility model. That's really the impetus for the FACA. The FBI shares that responsibility with the states, local agencies, tribes, federal partners, and territories. And the cloud security model isn't any different. It's actually very similar to how that shared responsibility occurs. And what you see here is a breakdown of who is responsible for security depending on your cloud implementation. So all the way to the left, you see with an on-prem, essentially the agency has complete responsibility. Everything is within their boundaries, and they are responsible for everything. As you move over to the right, in an IaaS cloud implementation, some of that responsibility now is assumed by the cloud service provider. So for example, compute, networking, and storage, those would be assumed by the cloud service provider. A good example of that is a disaster recovery site. With PaaS, a platform as a service, more responsibility is assumed by the cloud service provider. And then as you move all the way to the right with software as a service, nearly all of the responsibilities are assumed by the cloud service provider. The agency doesn't get absolved of all responsibility. They are still responsible, and they are the ones that are going to be audited, but that shared responsibility can be shared with their cloud service provider. A good example of that would be our Office 365, which is a software as a service that Microsoft has most of the responsibility for that security. Next slide, please. On October 1st, version 5.9.1 was published by the FBI. This version allows for deployments of criminal justice information in a non-physically secure location for IaaS and PaaS. As many of you know, a physically secure location requires the fingerprint background check for all personnel with logical or physical access to unencrypted CJI. Also, they must have documented security awareness training and a security addendum incorporated into the contract. And lastly, they must pass a technical and physical audit by either the CJIS Systems Agency or the FBI. That said, there is no commercial or non-physically secure location option for software as a service. New slide. Next slide. So what is the need for change? The original intent of the CJIS security policy over the years has been a data protection strategy. We are concerned with protecting the criminal justice information, and that's what the focus was of the security policy. It was really the floor and not the ceiling. All of the other security controls were above the data protection strategy. But as the security landscape has changed, there's an ever-increasing need for not only data protection, but cybersecurity. I'm sure we've all seen that in our daily lives. So many compliance standards are moving towards the more common NIST 800.53 standard. The FBI is no different. They have a modernization task force that is making recommendations to evolve the policy to align closely with NIST 800.53. And most recently, they published version 5.9.2 that significantly impacts the identity and authentication requirement and also the establishment of MFA everywhere. But that's a topic for another webinar. You can join us later and we'll talk about that in more depth. So that gives you a little bit of background of how we got to where we are. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Rick to discuss Azure commercial options for CJI.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it. If we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Appreciate it. One of the things to understand, sort of background on what the policy actually says in version 5.9.1 is it provided some real clarity for agencies around the critical issue of the appropriateness of a specific cloud platform to manage criminal justice information. It took away any potential confusion based on what a vendor might call their cloud, right? It really stripped it all away and said no matter what a vendor calls their cloud, what really matters is whether the people who operate it have been screened in accordance with the CJIS security policy. And the rest of it has been, again, sort of stripped away. If it's your super CJIS cloud, whatever you call it, doesn't matter. It really reinforced that the idea is it all pivots on whether those people who operate it have been screened in accordance with the policy. And what it did, once it established that sort of new understanding, that clear distinction between a cloud where the people have been screened under the policy and a cloud where the people operating it haven't, then they went a step further and they said, okay, for any cloud platform where the people operating it haven't been screened in accordance with the policy, you can use that cloud, but you have to implement 3 very specific controls. And it's important that this is for the agency to manage. If we think back to the look that Charlie had at the shared responsibility model, that comes into play right here again, because these are responsibilities that a agency, they've always been accountable, but now they actually have to manage physical controls in order to support their own compliance. The first one is relatively straightforward, keeping data in the US. Technically, it's US or any CJIS country. If you're CJIS folks, you know what I mean, but we'll just say keep the data in the US. The second thing is to implement and manage customer managed key encryption. And the reason that this requirement comes in goes back to that central idea of screening. If the people operating the cloud haven't been screened, then they can't have unescorted access to unencrypted criminal justice information. So you have to ensure that the data is encrypted in a way that the cloud personnel can't have access to unencrypted version. And so that is why customer managed key encryption becomes an essential component to managing criminal justice information on any cloud platform, no matter what it's called, any cloud platform that isn't operated by screened people. The last element is one that often gets overlooked, and it's just as important as the others. And this is that criminal justice information, even with data kept in the US, and even with customer managed key encryption implemented, that information, that data, that CJI, is decrypted for processing in the cloud and then re-encrypted again. And so there is a moment, even though the data may be encrypted with a key that only an agency has access to, that data is decrypted. And the policy is clear that at that moment that the data is decrypted, and we'll all agree it's a very short time, any administrative access by the cloud provider has to be prevented. And that means, and every cloud provider will have some variation of it, that means a hardened enclave inside the data center. So that is purpose-built hardware to support compute and storage that abstracts it away from the cloud personnel, even while it's been decrypted for processing. And so, as I mentioned, that last one sometimes gets overlooked. It's easy for a lot of agencies on greeting the news of 591 to say, well, keep the data in the US, we'll put in encryption and keep the keys. It's that last one that sometimes gets overlooked, that all the processing has to happen in a hardened enclave in a data center. Now, the enclave isn't new. I will say financial services has been using our version. It is confidential computing. We're part of the confidential computing consortium, which spans government, private sector entities that are leveraging confidential computing to add another layer. But what's important is that that last piece be part of the security model. So it's not a brand new technology that somebody has to learn, but again, that third item is often overlooked. What comes after this in a lot of discussions is the idea of, well, can my vendor manage the encryption keys for me in a solution? And sort of detail it here, only if they've been screened in accordance with the policy. And in this by the state or by the agency, or maybe at the state level in a way that could support all agencies in the state. But the policy makes clear that access to encryption keys is the same as access to data. So an agency can share encryption keys with a partner or a vendor of some kind, but only if, again, they've been screened in accordance with the policy itself. And then if the cloud vendor is saying, hey, we can support CJIS data, CJI in the clear without these elements, then you have to ask, can they share with you audit results? Show you the results of an audit that the vendor has passed, a CJIS audit that cloud provider has passed. And I would say not just a sign-off letter, not just a email that says, yes, they passed, but the actual audit results. Because again, the critical element in the policy in 591 is making really clear the difference between a cloud platform where the people have been screened and one where they have not been screened in accordance with the policy. Next slide, please. So we took a look at what you can do to support criminal justice information in our commercial cloud platform, Azure Commercial. Keep data in the US. Implement customer managed key encryption. Operate it all inside a hardened enclave. These are all available services and capabilities in the platform. But we want to reinforce just this idea that since 2014, criminal justice agencies have been leveraging our Azure government platform with all the technical controls, with screening done by CJIS systems agencies across the country. They've been passing audits since 2014 on this platform. And then you saw that we added additional cloud platforms with the same support, Office 365 Government Community Cloud, Dynamics 365 US Government as well, all under these agreements with state CJIS systems agencies that enable them to perform things like background checks and audit reviews on behalf of all criminal justice agencies in a specific state. So through that model, it means that every agency doesn't have to do their own screening of the cloud personnel on the Microsoft side in Azure Government. The state CJIS Systems Agency has an agreement in place with Microsoft to support it. So what we're trying to share is that there's an approach that has been passing audits and used by criminal justice agencies since 2014. We're excited that there's a new opportunity with the change with CJIS 5.9.1 that opens the door for different deployment models. We want to make sure that criminal justice agencies know the details on it, the facts sort of a click down, that they understand which responsibilities are moving to them in operating in any cloud without screened personnel. And it means that we can sit down, and we do this all the time, work with criminal justice agencies to help them assess which of these two platforms is the right fit for them as they support the mission with cloud-based solutions. So now I'm going to pass it back to Charlie, who's going to talk about what's coming next in the CJIS security policy. Charlie?
Great, thanks, Rick. Before I go into what's happening in the future, there's a question in the chat that asks about GCC, and if I understand the question correctly, the government cloud for Microsoft, the GCC, is a physically secure location. So you do not require CMK. You could add CMK if you would like, but it's not required for the GCC, and mainly because what I illuminated earlier, they have background and checked all 1,800 personnel that have logical and physical access to the GCC. They have passed a physical and logical access, or physical and technical audit, and they have signed a security addendum, and they have completed the security awareness training. And I can personally attest to the fact that they passed the audit, because in my prior life, I actually went to every government cloud data center and did an audit with a team of 6 people from FD Elite. So I think that was the question, is do you need CMK and GCC? And the answer is it's not required. You can certainly do it, but it is cleared to store unencrypted CJI if you want to. You don't have to. You can encrypt it at rest in GCC, but that's a choice by the agency. And and then the next question is, there's how are agencies meeting the most recent MFA requirements? I think that we will get into that in our next webinar, but I can tell you Microsoft does have a solution for you. So if you're interested, we can certainly have a discussion with you about that. But so the short answer is yes, Microsoft can help you meet that requirement, especially in a criminal justice environment where you have special needs, such as having an officer with a patrol vehicle and an MDT, and how do you do MFA in that scenario. So we can certainly help you with that and have that discussion. So what I'm going to talk about now is where we are going, right? In December, the FBI published 592, and as I mentioned earlier, it makes significant changes to the I can't say that. Let me try and say it in English. Identification and authentication requirements, which specifically requires MFA everywhere. There is a link to this new policy, and it's pretty extensive. This was an extensive change to the policy, and we are digesting it, and we are going to be coming out with a blog post in the future and a webinar as well to discuss how Microsoft can help you get there. This is only the most recent changes, 591 and 592. Throughout this year, 2023, the Security and Access Subcommittee is going to be looking at additional changes that are being brought forward by the Modernization Task Force, with the goal of completing the recommendations by December to the Advisory Policy Board and to the Director of the FBI, with an anticipated publishing of version 6.0 early in 2024. How early that is, it really depends on the FBI director. I've seen them go as late as August. I've seen them as early as March. It really depends on how many questions the director's office has for the CJIS division before they decide to approve that change. So like I said, we're going to have some blog posts and some webinars as the need arises, and we'll, stay tuned. We're going to be here to help you along the way. And now I'm going to turn it over to Leo, and he's going to tell you how we can help from a compliance perspective. Leo?
Yep.
Thank you, Rick and Charlie. Very informative on the CJIS policy update and how Microsoft is working with CJIS. I'm Leo Ramirez. I'm a compliance technical specialist here at Microsoft, and I work with state and local government customers, helping them with our Purview compliance solutions and how they can meet their use cases. If you can go to the next slide, Barry, please. All right. So now today we're going to talk to you about a Microsoft solution that can help you on your CJIS compliance journey. And next slide, Barry. I've met with many government customers and they need to comply with CJIS, and many times they just don't know where to start. They have lots of questions on how Microsoft addresses CJIS and the shared responsibility model. And thank goodness Charlie and Rick in their presentation answered a lot of those questions. There's another side to this animal though, getting this project started. Well, Compliance Manager can help simplify your risk management program. And here's how. When you add an assessment template for CJIS, it's going to provide personas like compliance officers, risk officers, IT and security admins with step-by-step guidance on what they need to do to achieve CJIS compliance. Compliance Manager, it's intuitive and it makes implementing controls easy. There's also built-in automation that maps controls from one assessment to another. So if you need to comply with CJIS and HIPAA and NIST, well, it's going to do that mapping for you, so you don't have to do it. Also, what Compliance Manager is not, it's not a point-in-time assessment. It's continuous. And this is important because it's going to help reduce blind spots between your assessments. Compliance Manager is going to provide you with a score that's measuring your progress, something that you can demonstrate to internal and external auditors that you're actually making progress towards CJIS compliance. Now, me personally, I like to compare a Compliance Manager to a fitness program that's specifically designed to get you the results you want. All you really have to do is follow the program and you're going to get those results. Next slide, please. So, super simple to get started. The CJIS assessment template, it's actually a premium template in Compliance Manager. Microsoft has made a lot of investment in helping customers simplify their risk and compliance objectives. There are over 350 templates that you can choose from. Many times customers ask, well, what if my services aren't in Microsoft? How can Compliance Manager help me? Well, we actually have, as you can see on the slide, universal templates. And you can use these if you have workloads that are in other clouds outside of Microsoft. You're still going to get the guidance on what you need to do towards achieving CJIS compliance. Now, as I mentioned earlier, super easy to get started. You can sign up for a trial and right away begin evaluating recommendations towards improving your CJIS compliance posture. I can also share with you that the price of these premium assessment templates have been reduced significantly as of last month. And if you're a G5 customer or E5 customer, you can get any of 3 premium assessment templates for free. So if you're on this call, it's likely that you understand there's a high cost for not being compliant. Regulatory fines for not passing an assessment, cybersecurity attacks for not implementing recommended controls, loss of citizen data, damaged reputation. Now, the cost of this template is trivial compared to these other costs that I just mentioned. Next slide, please, Barry. Now I'm going to show you a demo so you can see how easy it is to get started with the CJIS assessment template to begin your journey towards CJIS compliance. And I'm going to take over control of the screen and start sharing my demo environment. All right. So here, if you can see my screen, I'm in the Compliance Manager overview page. Compliance Manager, it's a solution within the Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. Scrolling down, right away, I can see my score. This low score shows that I have a lot of work to do towards achieving compliance for CJIS. Scrolling down further, I see the points that I've achieved, roughly 1,400 out of 16,920. This is the customer's responsibility. We also see that there's a Microsoft managed points, and this is Microsoft responsibility. Charlie went over this earlier in his slide that because we're in the shared responsibility model, Microsoft has already done a lot of the work for you. The customer still has to do their work towards improving their compliance posture. I'm going to go over to the Improvement Actions tab. And I have this filtered by CJIS because I've added a CJIS assessment to this, my compliance manager. Filtered by CJIS, and these are all the improvement actions that are going to help me, give me recommended actions on what I need to do to improve my posture. Now there's 614 items, and there's obviously a lot of work I have to do. Many of these improvement actions, controls, many of them are technical, but some of them are going to be documentation, operational controls, all contributing to my compliance score. And if you see here, looks like I have a pending update. What this means is anytime there's a regulatory change or an update, well, that gets rolled up into your assessment template, and you can choose when to accept that update. So the update that Rick and Charlie were referring to, well, guess what? That is coming into Compliance Manager. And that means you don't have to keep up with those regulatory changes. All of that's automated for you. So within these improvement actions, they can actually be assigned to different users who have responsibilities in these different solution areas. Speaking of solutions, let's go over to the Solutions tab so that you can see all of the solutions that are going to contribute to your score. It looks like we have 32. I'm just going to scroll down so you can see. Scroll back up. Let's move over to the Assessments tab. So over here, these are all the assessments that I've added for this tenant. But today, we're talking about CJIS. We're going to click into the CJIS template. And here I see a score on my progress specific to CJIS. And I'm at 53%. This tells me how I'm doing. Again, we see my points as a customer versus the Microsoft points. Moving over to controls. This is going to give us a breakdown of the control status. And we can see these by the different control families. Now this is interesting, and I want you to take a good look here, because these are all the areas of the CJIS security policy. I'm going to go over to this tab. What I've done here is I've downloaded the CJIS security policy from the FBI's website, and I'm going to go down to page 24 so you can see these different policy areas. Let's take a look at this one. There's 13, but let's focus our attention on the security awareness training. Let's go back to the Compliance Manager CJIS assessment template. And here we see that same policy area, security awareness training. What this is telling us is this is not Microsoft telling you what to do to improve your CJIS compliance posture. We're getting this directly from the CJIS security policy, making it easy for you, making it available in this template. One of the benefits of using Compliance Manager. I'm going to go back, scroll up. Again, these are all the improvement actions that are going to be related to your CJIS assessment. And these are the Microsoft actions, which is demonstrating to you that Microsoft has already done their work towards helping you with your CJIS. And there's actually evidence that's uploaded And each of those improvement actions, you can also upload your own evidence in each of these, within each of these. I'm going to go back to assessments, and I want to show you the assessment template section. Here, this is essentially a library of all the assessment templates that you can choose from to add to Compliance Manager. Today, we're talking again about CJIS, but if you needed to comply with HIPAA or IRS 1075, you're going to find that template. Even if you have state and local government privacy acts, we have templates for those as well. And the value here is that as you are adding different assessment templates, Compliance Manager is going to automatically map those controls from one assessment to another. So you don't have to keep track of them. It's reducing your work, doing the automation for you. Go back to the overview page. Again, as you're implementing these improvement actions, your score is going to go up. Now, this was just a short high-level demo to show you the value of how easy it really is to get started on your CJIS compliance journey. Microsoft has made it easy. They've done a lot of the work for you, not to mention showing you exactly what you need to do on improving your compliance posture. I hope you found today's discussion on Compliance Manager CJIS assessment template valuable, and I hope you get started soon. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Ashok, who's going to talk to you about some additional capabilities for your CJIS journey in Microsoft Azure.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Leo. Thank you for great overview on Compliance Manager. Now, you give me a perfect platform to segue into Defender for Cloud. And in the next slide, I'm going to talk about how Microsoft Defender for Cloud can help managing overall security and compliance posture. Now, at Microsoft, we believe in platform level end-to-end security, and with the motion of SIM and XDR, we believe that customers and organizations can do more with less security tools where things are integrated. Now, Leo mentioned about Compliance Manager, which is part of Microsoft 365 Defender product suite. However, organizations are using multi-cloud, hybrid cloud environment like your IIS, your PaaS instances, and bunch of other workloads that you deploy in a true multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environment. And it has been extremely challenging for the customers to meet the compliance and security needs based on like developments and things are happening at scale. So Defender for Cloud can help customers to achieve security and compliance using the features that it has. Microsoft Defender for Cloud is a true cloud native application protection platform, which has this feature called Cloud Security Posture Management. Cloud Security Posture Management helps organizations to continually assess the workloads deployed in the multi-cloud and hybrid environment. Not only that, it helps to secure and harden misconfigurations based on industry, regulatory best practices. And not only that, as we talk about automation of the platform, it's what are the actions we can take in the platform so that this compliance is kind of simplified. So a Defender for Cloud can help there. So as I would be talking about compliance assessment or regulatory compliance in the next slide, I would give overview on Defender for Cloud can help achieve different types of regulatory and industry framework. Like, for example, there is NIST, HIPAA, HITRUST, FedRAMP, CIS, and whatnot. Based on my experience with state and local government, most of the state and local governments, they are very passionate about FedRAMP, HIPAA, HITRUST, and NIST is one of the control that Charlie mentioned. It helps to map to CJIS and whatnot. Now, in Defender for Cloud compliance assessment and management, while you have this industry and regulatory standards and best practices. You can create custom templates based on your need, and with this you can continuously assess your environment and create a dynamic dashboard that can be shared with the auditors or your leadership, just to see how your environment is trending in terms of security posture, or do you have any compliance drift that you can catch early and you can take action. And I'm going to give a demo on like Defender for Cloud. So to give you a good walkthrough about this product. Uh, okay, so think about this organization. Contoso is trying to prepare themselves for an upcoming audit on CJIS. And as you heard from Charlie and Rick, that there are specific technical requirements needs to be done in your Azure commercial environment. This organization have gone through, and they are trying to harden their environment based on NIST 853 revision 5 controls. And as you see on the screen, it kind of gives you overall security posture and regulatory compliance. But if I try to go deeper into that dashboard, it gives you level of details like how I'm trending in terms of Microsoft Security Benchmark, which is kind of combination of different industry framework. However, as we are talking about NIST special publication 853 revision 5, so I can assess my environment based on those controls. And Leo mentioned that control mapping. So based on my background experience, I worked in an audit and accounting company. So I've been in multiple audits. One of the difficult thing is how you map the controls in your technical environment. So controls are written so that it's overarching and it kind of matches with all the organizations, but to make sure you are meeting based on your requirement, it's very important. So Microsoft platform helps you to articulate what's in your environment, and it gives you an assessment based on your workload, your resources, your IS instance, your PaaS instance, your services, and it makes you identify those compliance drift early. And as you see in the screen, I have all the control domains, which is exactly described in NIST, and it has each and every individual policy. Not only that, if I try to go further detail behind the scene, what's happening, Microsoft is implementing one or more Azure policy, which is a service which is running behind the scene to make sure each and every control is mapped. Now, as you see, AC-1, these are kind of a policy and procedure control, and these are mostly manual controls that organization has to meet in terms of documentations and whatnot. So in this particular view, you see these are manual action and action type is documentation. However, it clearly articulates what's Microsoft responsibility. You heard from Charlie the shared responsibility, which is very important aspect in security and compliance, because Microsoft is providing the platform. Microsoft is responsible for security of the cloud. And with this particular view, you have clear understanding on this particular platform what Microsoft is doing. However, even on the manual controls, Microsoft gives you like the understanding that what are the controls that organization needs to meet. Let me go through a few other technical control just so that you understand what's happening behind the scene in your environment. Now for AC-1 account management, I see there is a control failure and it failed due to some virtual machine which is not having just in time network access control. So in this view, you are getting few useful information. I know which control failed. I know why it failed. And you might ask, okay, do I have any action I can take? Of course you do. So if I try to go further details into the this particular control failure, you have all the details. Do I fix it? Yeah, I can fix it from the portal. However, a lot of time I've seen organizations, they have this fat Excel book and they try to articulate all the details. Like, is it an exception? Do I accept the risk or do I mitigate the risk? You can have all the details and you articulate and you save it. So it will be in the platform. So this gives the level of details that you can fix it from the environment, as well as you assign owner or you can create exception. Now, in the chat, I was watching that there was conversation about multi-factor authentication. Now, identification and authentication is the control domain where multi-factor authentication comes into picture. Now, you see, this is one of the key control, and this is evident that everybody in the chat was talking about it. Now, it's a control for a NIST that multi-factor authentication for privileged accounts needs to be done. However, how do you implement this in your environment? As you see, I'm not doing good job in my environment, and I have somebody who is having owner level permission and do not have MFA turned on. So if I try to go deep, I know who did that and I can take additional action. So from the platform, you can see all the details and you can take action. And these are the key controls I have seen during the audits that auditors look for, and they try to make sure you have at least minimum control and maximum security. And another aspect I was Rick mentioned regarding cryptography and encryption key and whatnot. So in this particular control system and communication protection, let me see how I am doing on the cryptographic key. And you see there is something failure in my environment. If I try to go deep, I know there are resources that needs a cryptographic key or that needs additional information. So, and again, I would like to go through this control, which kind of gives you in your environment, what are the areas where you have opportunity to enable data at rest encryption. And most of the time, auditors and your cybersecurity GRC team might be asking those questions. In your workload, you have all those different services using. Have you turned on data at rest encryption? And this particular view helps you to provide all those level of details. Now, you might be wondering, do you have opportunity to download this report? Because when audit happens, the auditors try to collect evidence from your environment so that they can preserve, and it can be a good report for your leadership team to see how you're progressing in your environment. So there is an option to download this report, uh, uh, and it gives you an executive summary that is can be preserved as evidence or can be shared with the auditors. As you see in the screen, this is generated right now. And if I try to see what's in there, it has executive summary, it has sections or control summary, and it has status about each and every control. I'm sure like leadership team would love to see this view. Like I know out of 333 controls, there are controls that passed, and I can go further details how I am trending on each and every domains. Now you must agree with me, maintaining a list of those 300 controls in a static workbook, it's extremely difficult. On the other hand, this platform can help you the level of visibility and you can take action from the platform. Now, the next thing is what you need to do to turn this feature on. So for that, you can go into manage compliance policy and you need to turn on a specific Defender plan. As I was talking about, Microsoft platform is a true multi-cloud platform. And in this view, you can see I have Azure and GCP environment. For Azure, I can go to my subscription and I can turn on specific Defender plans to get this enabled. This is part of a premium Defender CSPM. However, this is right now in public preview and it's still free. So please feel free to start using it. And the feature that I was talking about is regulatory compliance and industry best practices. Now, behind the scene, what's happening, if I may talk about it. So behind the scene, there is a policy engine running, which has all those controls mapped into specific Azure policy. As you see, by default, Microsoft Security Benchmark or Azure Security Center audit policies are turned on by default. However, should you need any specific industry or regulatory standard, you can already turn on. So as you see here, I have manually added this NIST 853, which is already available. All you need to do, you need to just add or turn it on in your environment, and it has all these audit policies which are running in your environment. However, if you have to create any specific custom initiative based on any industry framework, you always have option to customize your initiative or customize any specific policy that you are creating. And this is the level of customization you have in your environment. It's not that something Microsoft is giving, but you have opportunity to fine tune based on your requirement. As I was summarizing, you can add it for your Google environment as well. If you go to standard for GCP, it will show you that you can turn on GCP NIST 853. However, this is in public preview, so we are working on making sure we are updating from Microsoft side. But whenever there is a new publication, you would have a new template already added, and all you have to do is add to your environment. So as you see this level of details where it's not only you can take action, you can continuously monitor your environment. You find this dynamic dashboard and you have support for multi-cloud environment like Azure and AWS and GCP to make sure that you can take all those actions, make sure you are adhering to industry best practices and policy. So to summarize, Defender for Cloud can help you continuously assess your environment. It gives you the visibility to monitor your environment based on industry best practices. Microsoft recommendation can help you to achieve and harden some of the misconfigurations, and you can take proper action to make sure that you are adhering to security best practices. With this, hope this presentation was helpful to you. I would hand over to Barry for the closing notes. Barry, over to you.
Thank you, Ashok. All right. So everybody, thank you for joining today. This is pretty much our last slide. This is what we refer to as our resource slide. So as you can see here, got a few items that were pretty much follows the flow of what we covered today. So Leo covered Purview Compliance Manager. Ashok just covered Defender for Cloud. And then we have 3 reference documents that you see here. And when you get access to this deck, these will be hot links. And then lastly, towards the bottom there, wanted to point out a couple things. You know, a lot of people say that compliance it starts and it never ends. So we have some very good partners specific to the Microsoft Compliance Platform. And we even have some partners that are specifically very strong and astute with CJIS. So depending on where you are in the country, you know, if you contact through that alias, if you have questions or looking for a partner, we can certainly help you and guide you to recommend a great partner from where you're at in the country. And the last thing is Microsoft has a Purview customer community. So if you'd like to join that, you will see that link as well. And you'll have to fill out a few questions and you will be in our community. We'd love to have you join. So without any further ado, we really appreciate all the questions that you had today. And thank you again for joining, and you will be notified of future compliance webinars coming up. And unless there are any other questions, I think we're good to go. So we have a few minutes left. If you have any remaining questions, please feel free to continue to put them in the Q&A section.
I'd like to answer one of the questions that came in about Compliance Manager. Someone asked if you could use Compliance Manager as an on-prem solution. Well, that's actually a good question. And what you would leverage in Compliance Manager is a custom assessment template. And you can actually base that off of CJIS or any other regulatory assessment that you're tracking. Looks like they had a follow-up question. Is Compliance Manager something a third-party vendor could use to assess that their vendor solution was compliant? That's a good question too, but Compliance Manager is more about assessing the environment that you have. Now, I mentioned earlier during my discussion the universal templates. let's just say, for example, you have, you're using Amazon or Salesforce. Well, you can use a universal template for those third-party clouds. I hope that's answering that question. And I'll turn it over to Rick.
Rick is going to answer the MFA question. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, hi everybody. There was a question in the chat about Microsoft capabilities to support the MFA requirement in 592. So for some context, 591, which we're discussing today, had a significant impact on sort of cloud providers in the way that they can now, like Microsoft, can offer options in clouds where the people have been screened under the policy. 592, released at the first week of December, is going to have much more impact on agencies. And as we've worked with agencies since its publication, looking at older systems that maybe haven't been designed with MFA in mind, providing an inventory of solutions so they can start to address sort of a unified identity approach. One thing to note is that the MFA requirement is auditable and sanctionable starting October 1st in 2024. So it seems like a long time, but in a lot of the work that we've done with agencies across the country, less time than it appears by the time you go through a funding cycle and everything else. So I just wanted to sort of set that foundation. The direct answer is there are different options available on Microsoft depending on how you are, because of the different offerings that we have, more than a cloud, we have so many different capabilities. So if we think about something like Active Directory, able to manage unified identity where MFA is very straightforward. I know Charlie has experience managing things like Authenticator, an app that enables MFA. The last one is probably a great example of how broad the reach of capabilities are to satisfy MFA is Windows Hello, specifically Windows Hello for Business, which is an authentication mechanism built into the physical device, into your laptop. So while the policy didn't have Windows Hello for Business in mind on 592, but we can actually provide you guidance on how to use a capability like Windows Hello for Business in conformance with the CJIS security policy and the MFA requirement in 592. 592 provides so many changes that we're going to have a follow-up webinar, just like this one was focused on 591. We're going to have a follow-up webinar that is just about supporting the MFA requirement in version 5.9.2. So you should look for communications from Microsoft on that event coming up in the future. But again, it's all part of working closely with our customers across all of our different solutions and capabilities to support their CJIS compliance in executing their mission.
Rick, thank you. And since there's still quite a few of you left on the call, thank you again. But I'm going to share this one slide again, which has an email address on it that you will be able to contact us. So msslgcompliance@microsoft.com. That'll go to our whole team that is focused on Microsoft Compliance Platform. So if you have any questions regarding from this webinar today, feel free to ask it. So again, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you again all for joining, and look forward to seeing you again on another one of our webinars. Thank you, everybody.